Hey guys, how's it going? It's Danconia and welcome back to the Overwatch League Roundup 2020 Week 1 results. So we finally have the first week completed for the Overwatch League 2020. It seems like there's been a massive build up to this point, but we finally got to see some of the teams in action. And to be quite honest, there's been some really interesting stuff going on in just week 1. So I can't wait to see when the rest of the teams take the stage in their home stands in the coming weeks. So let's go through the results we've seen and what we've seen in terms of perhaps hero picks and what we've seen, how we've seen the teams turn out in terms of their rosters and lineups and stuff like that. So first of all, we had the Toronto Defiant taking on the Paris Eternal. Now, this was the first game of the weekend, and this, in my opinion, was a fairly even matchup. Paris Eternal are not good, possibly, I want to put possibly in here, not as powerful as they perhaps will be towards the end of the season because they haven't got all of their players available to them right now. Hanbin and Sparkle are still ineligible due to being too young. And on top of this, they didn't have Smex either. So Smex, he either didn't make the journey or was, I think Smex was ill or something. He wasn't able to get to New York for the Paris game. So this meant that Paris Eternal were going to have to turn out this entire weekend without an off-tank. So, this forced the Paris Eternal to play No Smite and Benbest together. Two main tanks. But, it actually wasn't too bad for Paris. So, we'll look more into that in a minute. Toronto Defiant, we've already talked about them, and we've talked about how possibly their weakest area is Beast, or Beast Halo as he used to be called. Their main tank, there's a lot of issues over him. We don't know whether he's quite up to scratch or not. In this match, Toronto Defiant do see out a 3-1 victory over the Paris Eternal, which in some respects is quite interesting because I think Toronto right now is more well-rounded than Paris is, but I think Paris in the future will become very well-rounded. And looking at what some of these players can do for Paris Eternal, so XZ was a massive standout player for this Paris Eternal team throughout the weekend. He was popping off left, right and centre. He is definitely the star player on this team right now. Also, big shout out to FD God, because FD God had some massive plays in the game against London as well, which we'll go over in a minute. But this Paris Eternal squad, currently, even though they've lost to Toronto, I think is looking pretty strong. And when you add, especially Hanbin coming fairly soonish, Sparkle's much later down the line, but when you add Hanbin, you're going to have a really good team on your hand along with Smex as well. And then when you add Sparkle, I think Paris are real underdogs right now. I think they're looking like a team that could cause some upsets during this season. But the interesting thing that Paris Eternal did do is we haven't actually, I don't think, seen Cruz at all. We've seen Hip, we've seen FD God, and we've seen Grey, but we haven't seen Cruz, which is something I think some people are a bit surprised about. FD God played all of the games, I think, for the Paris Eternal, and he was really, really good. Really, really good. So I think this is actually a really good pickup for Paris Eternal, even though some people were just calling it as like a PR pickup because he's French. I don't think that's the case here. FD God has really shown up this weekend. On to Toronto Defiant now, and the only map that Toronto Defiant lost against the Paris Eternal was the map where they didn't play Shore. They played on the Zhang Tower was the map they lost. They lost it 2-0 to the Paris Eternal, right? And they played Logics and Agilities. And I'm sorry, Agilities is too inconsistent. And Logics is a very good hit scan player. Don't get me wrong. But I don't think he offers what Shore offers. Toronto, they were being carried at times by Shore. I would say that. Their support line looked decent with Kareev and Kellex. Nevix looked decent as well. Beast, yeah. Weak point perhaps. And honestly, I wasn't overly impressed with whoever was playing the other DPS than Shore. So mainly that was Agilities throughout the game with sometimes Logics coming in. It was mainly Shore that was a standout DPS for the Toronto Defiant, but we all kind of expected that, I think. But it's a good win for Toronto Defiant because Paris, I think, are looking stronger than some people expected. So moving on then, we're going to look at London Spitfire taking on the New York Excelsior. So most people had this down as a whitewash for New York Excelsior. London, completely new team, completely, well, they want to say rookies, but some of them aren't rookies, let's be honest. Some of them have got a lot of experience in contenders. Some of them are complete rookies, like Sanguinar is a fairly complete rookie, right? So I think we can say London is a complete rookie team, but certainly in terms of the Overwatch League, it's a rookie team. So London came into this with no expectations, but London impressed me against New York. They really, really did. So they took the first map against New York, and it looked like the London that we were used to. Then they took them very close on King's Row. Then they lost on Horizon Lunar Colony. And then it kind of went south. They kind of ran out of steam, and then they got kind of trounced on Junkertown at the end. So they lost 3-1 to the New York Excelsior. I don't think that's by any means a bad look for the London Spitfire right now. They ran out with Glister, Babel, J-Mac, Banar, Hylie, and Sanguinar. I was honestly surprised at Babel and Sanguinar, but Babel really impressed. I think the entire DPS, I mean, Glister's really good anyway, but Glister and Babel, the DPS line for London Spitfire, for this entire weekend basically, really, really impressed. Really impressed, especially in this New York game. Banar, he had, I think, one of the highest ults negated in this weekend. Really good on the Diva. Really impressed with the Banar so far. Hylie looked good, and Sanguinar looked good as well during this New York game. J-Mac, yeah, there's the question mark. They got a similar problem to Toronto right now. Yeah, that's the issue. But the problem is New York Excelsior's quality is crazy right now. Who Are You is bonkers. We have seen Who Are You throughout the London game. Who Are You is actually bonkers. Hotbar is bonkers. As per usual, Hotbar was getting so many good ults. It was crazy. New York looking darn good. New York looking darn good. That's what we can say right now. But let's start moving through a bit quickly here. So to move over to the Dallas games, and we saw Los Angeles Gladiators taking on the Vancouver Titans. This was a tight game, and this is what I expected from this game. One great thing for the LA Gladiators though, and this is a massive thing for the LA Gladiators in terms of their whole season. Birdring turned up. He turned up. This is great. Birdring looked good. Jaru looked good. And when they subbed in Mirror on Dorado, he looked good as well. The Los Angeles Gladiators have got DPS. This is massive for their season. Another great thing is that LH Cloudy looked good as well, and he was played for most of the match instead of OG. So there's never any need to question the support line of LA Gladiators. We know Big Goose and Shaz are good, but this is massive for the Gladiators that Birdring and the rest of the DPS are looking good. This is going to make a massive difference to their season, and the Gladiators, I think the stonks are going up for the Gladiators right now. Impressed with their first week. And Vancouver Titans, obviously, this weekend we've seen Fisher and Rouge Hong in action. And I tell you what, okay, Fisher's been great, right? Fisher is good. He was caught out at times, but it wasn't too major. He seems to have settled in fairly well. What I think is beautiful, right? Hacksaw on the Genji, getting a nano boost from Rouge Hong on the Ana, and just going to town. I think that is beautiful, just to see Hacksaw doing that with Rouge Hong. I think that's just awesome, and that was honestly one of the highlights of the weekend for me. Hacksaw was really good on the Genji, but we expect that nonetheless from someone as good as Hacksaw. So, Vancouver Titans, very good weekend for them, but again, the worry for the Vancouver Titans is in the long term, not the short term. I think they'll be perfectly fine in the short term, be a very powerful team. But then we had the Los Angeles Valiant taking on Dallas Fuel. So, Dallas Fuel in scrims, the rumours have been that Dallas Fuel have been underperforming. The rumours about the Valiant is that they are good. And this showed. Valiant get a 3-1 win over the Dallas Fuel. So, I think this is not beyond the realms of possibility. This is not a shock. The Valiant look like they've got potential. They really do look like they've got potential. And if I was doing power rankings right now, I wouldn't be ranking them 19th. Far from it. Dallas Fuel will probably be in that place, no word of a lie. The promising thing for the Dallas Fuel, as we thought before the season started, Doha and Decay are brilliant. They are really, really good. And throughout this weekend I have seen plenty of points where Doha and Decay have been carrying this Fuel team to just be competitive. Without Doha and Decay, Fuel would have been stomped during this weekend. That's without a doubt. And this is at their own homestand, remember. So these two players are going to be crucial to the success of the Dallas Fuel this season if they can find it. Now, another interesting thing from the Fuel is that we saw a lot of double main tank, like we saw from the Paris Eternal. The Paris Eternal were forced into it, whereas the Fuel weren't. A lot of the time they were playing Gamsu and Drill. So, interesting, and most of the time we saw Crimzo and Closer in terms of the supports for Dallas Fuel. Dallas Fuel with a lot of work to do. Valiant, it's looking promising, and we'll continue to talk about the Valiant in a minute. So moving on to the next day's fixtures, we move back to New York and we saw the London Spitfire take on the Paris Eternal. Now this is a different ballgame. Paris Eternal still look very, very good. They look very, very good, right? XZ popping off again. And again, I don't think Paris Eternal would be as strong without XZ, without a doubt. They wouldn't be there. But FD God, this is where he really shined. This is where FD God really, really shined for the Paris Eternal. London did not turn up. Like, they were completely outmatched by Paris. Whether they were not prepared with what Paris were going to turn out with, whether they were not prepared for them to run double main tank, Paris even ran the Sigma at sometimes, which was interesting. London were not prepared. They got 3-0'd by Paris here. Now, I did not expect this considering the performance that London put up against New York Excelsior. So, this is really disappointing from a London Spitfire point of view because if they got, you know, a close result, even if they still lost against Paris, it would have been a good week for London. But this really tarnished the weekend for London because that New York Excelsior performance was impressive. So I don't know whether that was over preparation for New York and under preparation for Paris, which would be disappointing considering the coaching structure London have now got. It's a disappointing weekend from London because it could have been so much more, but there is definite potential in this team, and more potential than I think some people gave them at the start of the season. So if London can improve and, you know, get JMac working, because JMac is kind of a weak link right now, if they can get him working alongside their actually really decent DPS line, London could really improve this season. But Paris Eternal, this is a team to watch out for, especially when they get their new players on board, because XZ is popping already. When you pair XZ with Flippin' Sparkle, this is going to be a DPS line, I believe, that can rival the best in the league. So Paris Eternal, I think in the future are looking scary. They're looking scary, and especially with that all-Korean coaching staff, there are moves going on at Paris, so it's a team to watch out for right now. But London, it could have been so much more, is what we're going to say to that. Then we had the Boston Uprising taking on the New York Excelsior. Now, no surprises here that the New York Excelsior get a 3-0 win. We kind of all expected that. New York started off slow against Boston. Boston didn't look as bad as perhaps we were expecting, but they can't compete with the quality of NYXL. The big teller for Boston Uprising right now, again, another team you could consider rookies. The big teller for Boston Uprising right now will be when they take on the lower teams. When they take on the likes of the Houston Outlaws, which we're expecting to be fairly lower down the league. When they take on the likes of the Toronto Defiant. When they take on the likes of, well, Paris, you can argue at the moment, but London. Boston, that's where they've got to pick up their wins. And if they don't, that's what will root them to the bottom of the league. So it's very early days for this Boston Uprising roster. And again, it was against New York, in New York. So take it with a pinch of salt. But Boston Uprising have some work to do. New York, looking good. Remember, this was in New York. So again, they had the whole crowd behind them. But the new pickup of Who Are You, as I expected, really, really good. And New York, I think they are going to be the challengers to shock. I think they might have a bit more than Vancouver right now. But it's very, very early days. I'd love to see Who Are You's Genji go up against Hacksaws Genji. That's all I'm saying. That's looking like a hell of a battle. But moving back to the last two fixtures that rounded us off in Dallas, we saw the Los Angeles Valiant taking on the Vancouver Titans. Again, positives to take from this for the Valiant, even though they lost 3-0 to the Vancouver Titans. Blizzard World finished 5-4 to the Titans. Valiant were not rolled in this match by any means. And that is great, because at the start of the season, when we were looking at the Valiant's roster, we would have expected them to get absolutely squashed underneath the power of the Titans. But this has not been the case. Titans still look really, really good. But Valiant, they're probably the most positives to take out of this weekend for any team. Paris, I could have expected XZ to do well. Los Angeles Valiant, I didn't expect this. And Valiant, honestly, even though it's a weekend where you've only got one win, but you were going against Vancouver, Valiant, a lot of positives to take from the weekend. And I think this is a team that are actually going to be perhaps a lot higher up the league than we were expecting. And perhaps we should all just have listened to Custer. Perhaps we should just listen to Custer more often. But then we rounded off the weekend, San Francisco Shock taking on the Dallas Fuel. Dallas Fuel really disappointing, obviously, loss against the Valiant earlier in the weekend. San Francisco Shock, first test of the early season champions jitters that we saw from London last season. And to be quite honest, nah. Shock win this one 3-1. The interesting thing is, the teamwork at the Shock right now, tiny bit off. Much more individual popping off we've seen here. But what was actually astonishing is we saw Architect playing the support Anna throughout the entire match. And my gosh, was he good. Like, Architect was really good on the Anna. And it just shows the diversity of the Shock roster. And again, I would expect Shock to improve throughout the season with this teamwork thing. A lot of individual skill on display during this weekend for the Shock. Well, just this match, because it was the only match they played. But I really think there's a lot of positives to take from this from the Shock. Shock will be right up there. No matter. We know the Shock are going to be up there. It's just a question of who is going to be number 1 and who's going to be number 2 and who's going to be number 3. Because at the moment, from what I can say at this early stage, remember that, early stage, looking at the top 3 from last year, probably going to be the top 3 from this year. Unless we see something from the other teams right now. But Vancouver look like they've edged out, you know, a really good Gladiators team. New York looking good. And then Shock looking good. There's your top 3 again. Unless someone comes up with something really interesting. Which honestly, wouldn't put it past Paris near the latter end of the season. Dallas Fuel though, much more promising than the Valiant match. They really did cause the Shock some problems, especially on Oasis. And then they took Horizon Lunar Colony as well. So, more positives from this match, in my opinion, for Fuel than the match against the Valiant. The question is, if they keep dropping these, like, they need to win against the likes of Valiant if they want to be a playoffs team or they want to be a play-ins team. And that's not what they got at their own homestand. So, yeah. Dallas, as I said during the power rankings, I never bet on Dallas, because no matter how good their roster looks, it lets you down. And this weekend, it's let me down, especially against the Valiant. But those are the results for this weekend. I think that the broadcast of the Overwatch League has gone through a bit of teething problems, you know, but we always get that at the start of the season. I think overall, it's been a good start to the season. The broadcast was most of the time hovering around 60k. One caveat to take from that is that it was being dual broadcast. It was broadcast on the Overwatch League YouTube, and it was also broadcast live on the Play Overwatch YouTube, which was hovering around 15k. So for regular matches, especially on day 2, when you look at around 75 to 80k is not too bad. The first day was over 100k combined, which you kind of expect that. Obviously, viewership is going to take a hit because there are no tokens available right now to earn from watching it. Once that becomes a thing again, viewership will go up, just because people will keep it on in the background. So I think the viewership numbers have been impressive considering there are no rewards for watching. So people are just tuning in to watch people play. I think it's actually been pretty impressive, and I think it's been beating COD League, which is really, really good. So positives from the weekend. Positives from the weekend, definitely. I think there's still stuff to work on for the league, but positives definitely to be taken. But next week we move on to the Battle of Brotherly Love in Philadelphia, where we will see the Florida Mayhem, Houston Outlaws, Washington Justice, and obviously Philadelphia But this is where the odd timings start, because we have had obviously the Chinese homestands cancelled. This is where we would have seen the Shanghai homestand, where we would have seen Hangzhou, Seoul, Shanghai and Chengdu. We're obviously not going to see that right now, so it's going to be a very short weekend next weekend, but we will look forward to it nonetheless. I will do a fixtures video near the end of the week for that, but for now, thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you liked it, give it a like, subscribe if you're new, and I will see you in the next video. See you then.